Welcome, seeker of truth. Join me as we journey through history's mysteries, where ancient wisdom and timeless stories come alive. Prepare to ignite your imagination and uncover the hidden truths of the past.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be exploring the world of NevilleGoddard,
Ooh.
who was a mid-20th century spiritual teacher. And he had some pretty out there ideas about consciousness, imagination.
Yeah, radical ideas, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And reality.
Yeah, definitely not your average, self-help guru.
No, not at all.
He was drawing heavily from the Bible, but he really took these concepts and really kind of flipped them on their head.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that makes him so fascinating is that he was really looking at these ancient texts and finding new ways to interpret them and to apply them to our modern lives.
Yeah, and he was really onto something with this whole idea that we have way more power than we realize to shape our own reality.
Absolutely. And to really understand his teachings today, we're going to be digging into three of his core concepts.
Okay.
The power of awareness.
Okay.
Imagination creates reality.
All right.
And this idea that all things exist.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah, we're going to be diving into some deep waters today, folks, so buckle up.
I love it. Can't wait.
So let's start with the power of awareness.
Okay.
Goddard makes this really bold claim right off the bat that consciousness is the only reality, which, I mean, that's a pretty big statement.
Yeah, it's a huge statement. And what's funny is that this idea has been echoing throughout spiritual traditions for centuries.
Oh, for sure.
But Goddard really brought it to the forefront in a way that was both profound and practical.
Right. He really made it accessible to everyday people.
Exactly. And when you really stop and think about the implications of this idea, it's pretty mind-blowing.
So what are the implications of this? What does it actually mean if consciousness is the only reality?
Well, it means that everything we experience in the outside world is actually a projection of our inner state of consciousness.
Oh.
So our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings, all of it, it's all shaping the reality that we perceive.
So are you saying that, like, the external world doesn't exist?
Not necessarily. It's more that our perception of it is filtered through our own consciousness.
Right.
Like, imagine you ask someone for directions.
Yeah.
And they tell you, oh, that city is, 100 miles west of here.
Right.
That tells you more about their location than the city's actual location on a map.
Right.
And it's the same with, our descriptions of our jobs, our relationships, even our problems.
Oh, interesting.
They're all revealing more about our own internal state than anything else.
So basically what we're seeing in the world around us is kind of like a mirror.
Exactly. It's reflecting back to us our own thoughts, beliefs, and emotions.
Oh, I see. So it's not that the things themselves are good or bad or right or wrong. It's just our perception of them that's being colored by our own, stuff.
Yes, exactly. And this is where Goddard's concept of the subconscious comes in.
Okay.
And he says it's not some separate, mysterious entity.
Right.
It's simply our imagination.
Yeah.
So he's saying that our imagination is essentially what's creating our reality. In a way, yes.
That's wild.
And, he takes it even a step further, and he links imagination to the concept of Christ Jesus.
Okay, now that's a connection I wouldn't have expected.
Right. I know it sounds a little out there at first, but when you understand how Goddard uses symbolism and metaphor, it actually makes a lot of sense.
So how does he make that connection between imagination and Christ?
Well, remember, he's drawing heavily from biblical language, but he's not necessarily taking it literally.
Right.
He's using it to illustrate this idea that we have this incredible power within us to create and shape our reality, just like the concept of Christ as the creator in Christian theology.
I see. So it's like he's saying that we all have this divine spark within us.
Exactly.
This creative power that we can use to manifest our desires.
Yes, and if imagination is this potent force within us, Goddard says we have a responsibility for the thoughts that we feed.
What do you mean?
He talks about tending to our sheep,
Okay.
meaning our thoughts.
Okay, so we should be mindful of what we're thinking about?
Exactly, because just like a shepherd who needs to make sure his sheep are grazing on good pasture, we need to be feeding our minds with positive, loving thoughts.
Okay, that makes sense.
Otherwise, we're essentially walking them through mud.
So what are some practical ways to, feed our sheep with positive thoughts? Like, how do we actually do that?
Well, that's a great question, and it's something that we can dive into a little bit deeper as we go through these concepts.
Okay, great.
But for now, I think it's important to just start becoming aware of those inner conversations. You know, the things we're saying to ourselves all day long and asking ourselves, are we nurturing those thoughts with love and positivity? Or are we kind of beating ourselves up with negativity and fear?
That's a really good point, and I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, me included.
Right, like we all have that inner critic
For sure.
that's always ready to tell us we're not good enough or that we're going to fail.
Yeah, and Goddard is basically saying that we need to learn how to tame that inner critic
Okay.
and start speaking to ourselves with more kindness and compassion.
So how often do you find yourself, feeding your sheep negative thoughts?
Oh, probably more than I'd like to admit.
Right, I think we're all guilty of that sometimes.
Yeah, but the good news is that once we become aware of it, we can start to change it.
That's really encouraging
Yeah, absolutely.
because I think that's the first step, right?
Yeah,
Just being aware of what we're thinking and feeling, and then we can start to make different choices.
exactly. And that leads us perfectly into Goddard's next core concept, which is imagination creates reality.
Okay, so let's dive into that one.
Let's do it. And this is where things start to get really interesting.
So imagination creates reality.
Mm.
This is the idea that I think a lot of people have heard of.
Right, it's definitely one of his most popular concepts.
Yeah, but how does it actually work? Like, is this just, wishful thinking?
It's a little more than that. It's really about consciously using your imagination as a tool to shape your experience.
So it's like we have this power within us to create our own reality.
Yeah. And Goddard outlines some very specific steps for how to do this.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are the steps?
Well, first he talks about relaxing,
Okay,
quieting the mind, and really vividly visualizing your desired outcome.
so it's not enough to just kind of like, have a vague picture in your head of what you want.
No, you have to really engage all your senses.
Oh, interesting.
Sight, sound, touch, even smell and taste.
Wow.
And really, really feel the reality of it.
So you're not just thinking about it, you're almost like living it in your imagination.
Exactly.
That's pretty powerful.
It is. And if you're imagining, let's say, a new job,
Okay.
don't just see yourself sitting in a new office.
Right.
Feel the excitement of receiving the offer,
Yeah.
Hear your boss congratulating you. Imagine that feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction.
Okay, so you're really immersing yourself in the experience.
Yes, and this is where faith comes in.
Okay, so when you say faith, do you mean like blind faith?
Not exactly.
Okay.
By faith, Goddard means the subjective experience of your desire as already true.
I see. So it's about convincing yourself at a deep level that what you desire is already yours.
It's like planting a seed.
Okay.
You don't dig it up every day to see if it's growing.
Right.
You trust the process.
You have faith that it's gonna work.
Exactly, knowing that in its own time it will sprout and flourish.
But what about those times when, doubt creeps in?
Yeah.
Like, how do we stay focused on that feeling of faith when things aren't changing as quickly as we'd like?
Well, persistence is key.
Okay.
Just like tending a garden, you need to consistently nurture that seed that you've planted in your imagination.
So we're not just imagining it once and then forgetting about it.
No.
We have to keep coming back to it.
Keep returning to that feeling of it being real.
Right. And not letting doubt kind of steal our harvest.
Exactly.
I like that.
And this all ties into Goddard's third big idea, which is that all things exist.
Okay, now this one sounds a little paradoxical to me.
I know, it's a mind bender, for sure.
Because if we're creating our reality, how can everything already exist?
That's a great question. And to understand it, we have to really kind of shift our perspective.
Yeah.
Goddard draws on the poet William Blake.
Okay.
And Blake had this idea of eternal forms existing in imagination.
Oh, interesting.
It's like saying that every potential experience, every possible outcome already exists as a blueprint in the realm of imagination.
So it's not that everything physically exists right now.
Right.
It's that the potential for everything exists.
Exactly.
That's a really interesting way to think about it.
It is. It's like a cosmic library.
Oh, wow.
Where every book, every possible story is already written.
And we get to choose which book we want to read.
Exactly. Which story we want to bring into our experience.
That's such a cool analogy.
And so the question becomes, how do we make that choice? How do we select the book that we want? And this is where Goddard uses the analogy of feeding a pig.
Feeding a pig.
Yeah. He says that feeding the pig is using our imagination lovingly,
Okay.
consciously choosing to focus on what we want to experience.
So we're not just letting our imagination run wild.
Right.
We're actually directing it towards something specific.
Exactly.
Interesting. Now, I remember he tells that story about the woman who dreams of walking on water,
Oh, yeah.
but she admits to putting stones just below the surface.
Right, because she doesn't fully trust the water to hold her up.
So she's kind of hedging her bets.
Yeah, she's got one foot in the realm of imagination and one foot in the realm of, physical reality.
I mean, she's not fully committing to the idea that she can actually walk on water.
Exactly, and Goddard calls this having a hind claw.
A hind claw? What's that?
He's referring to those crabs in Barbados
Oh, okay.
that can stop their fall with a hind claw.
Oh, I see.
It's like having that backup plan.
Just in case our faith doesn't work out.
Exactly.
So we're clinging to that hind claw of doubt instead of fully embracing the power of our imagination.
And Goddard is urging us to let go of that hind claw,
Okay.
to fully trust that we can walk on water, so to speak.
To trust that we can create the reality that we desire.
Yes.
Now, are there examples of people who have, really mastered this?
Absolutely. He tells this incredible story about a woman who becomes what he calls the incurrent eyewitness.
Incurrent eyewitness.
And in this vision, he places his own eyes into her sockets.
Oh.
And suddenly she sees that everything in the universe exists within his imagination.
And therefore, her imagination.
Exactly.
Wow, so she's literally seeing the world through the eyes of imagination.
Yeah, realizing that creation itself is happening within her own mind.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is, and she becomes kind of the ultimate example of someone who has fully embodied that Blake quote.
All that you behold, though it appears without, it is within.
Yes, exactly.
That's powerful.
It is.
But it's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. It definitely is. But the beauty of it is you don't have to fully grasp it intellectually to start applying these principles.
So where do we begin? Like, how can we start experimenting with this in our own lives?
It starts with becoming aware of your desires.
Okay.
What do you truly want to experience? What kind of story do you want to tell with your life?
Yeah.
And once you know what you want, then it's about bringing those desires to life in your imagination.
Okay.
Engaging all your senses, really feeling the reality of them.
So it's almost like we're creating this inner movie
Yes, exactly.
of our desired reality.
Yeah, and don't get bogged down in the how.
Okay.
Just trust that the process works.
Like trusting that a seed is going to grow.
Exactly.
Once you plant it.
You don't have to understand all the intricate details of how it happens.
Right.
Just have faith that it will.
And so it's just shifting our focus from the external world to our internal world, recognizing that our inner world is what shapes our experience of reality.
Absolutely. And as we cultivate that inner world, nurturing it with those positive thoughts, beliefs, and feelings, right?
The outer world will reflect that change.
It's almost like we're all living in these personalized virtual reality worlds,
Ooh,
shaped by our own imaginations.
And the amazing thing is we have the power to change the program.
Yeah.
To rewrite the script, to create a whole new experience.
But the catch is you have to really believe it.
Yes.
You have to have that unshakable faith in the power of your imagination.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Not just intellectually, but deep down in your gut.
And Goddard talks about how doubt is like a thief that comes in and steals the seed that you've planted.
Right. So we have to be vigilant about those inner conversations and make sure that we're not undermining our own creative power
Exactly.
with negativity or doubt.
It takes practice.
So don't get discouraged if you don't see results overnight.
Yeah.
Just keep imagining.
Keep feeling the reality of your desires.
And trust that the process is working.
And you know what's really cool?
What's that?
Goddard talks about how we can literally change the past. How do we do that?
By revising our memories of events.
Oh, interesting.
So if something happened that didn't go the way you wanted, you can actually go back in your imagination and replay it with a different outcome.
Wow.
Feeling the emotions of that revised experience.
So we're essentially reprogramming our subconscious mind.
Yeah, you got it.
By feeding it these new, more empowering experiences.
And as you do this consistently, you'll start to notice shifts in your outer world as well.
So it's not just about changing our thoughts.
Right.
It's about changing our feelings, too.
Yes, it's about creating a whole new emotional reality.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the power of awareness to the creative force of imagination and this mind-blowing concept that all things exist.
It's a lot to digest.
But I hope you're walking away with a sense of empowerment.
Me too.
A realization that you have way more control over your experience
Yeah,
than you might have thought.
absolutely.
So here's a final provocative thought to leave you with.
Okay, I'm ready.
If all things exist in imagination, what will you choose to bring into your world?
What story will you tell?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the incredible teachings of NevilleGoddard.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Until next time, keep imagining, keep creating, and keep believing in the power of your own mind.
Thanks for exploring with me. If you enjoyed this journey, please like, share, and subscribe for more ancient wisdom.